The venue needs a $3,000 deposit by Friday or we lose the reservation, my mother said over the phone, her voice carrying the particular tone she reserved for requests she knew were unreasonable. Victoria's shower is Sunday and she's already invited 87 people. You're the only one who can afford it, Vivian. Please, for the family. I scrolled through my email while she spoke, looking at the digital invitation my cousin had accidentally forwarded me, the invitation to my own sister's baby shower that listed 87 guests and somehow failed to include my name. But why did I transfer the $3,000 without argument, and why, when the venue manager handed my sister an envelope on the day of her shower, did her celebration transform into something she never expected? Paid in full by your sister, the one you didn't invite. Enjoy. That was the note. Short, precise, devastating. But that wasn't the end of it. The venue manager cleared his throat and addressed the assembled guests. I've also been asked to announce that the after-party at Luminera has been cancelled. The restaurant has been booked for a private celebration. He glanced at his notes. A CEO promotion party. For the same sister who paid for this event. My mother's call came 37 seconds later. I didn't answer. The exclusion from Victoria's baby shower was the culmination of a lifetime of being treated as the family ATM rather than the family member. Victoria was 3 years younger, significantly more charming, and had perfected the art of positioning herself as the sympathetic victim while I absorbed the role of the successful but cold older sister. Vivian doesn't need support, she's always fine. Vivian can handle it, she's the strong one. Vivian should help, she has the money. These phrases had echoed through my childhood, my adolescence, my adult years. Every family crisis defaulted to my resources. Every celebration prioritized Victoria's feelings. Every conflict was resolved by my capitulation. I'd built a career in finance, rising through increasingly demanding positions, sacrificing relationships and leisure for achievement. At 41, I was about to become CEO of a major investment firm, the youngest woman and first person of color to hold the position in the company's 90-year history. None of my family knew. I'd stopped sharing professional achievements years ago, when it became clear that my success was valued only for what it could provide them. The baby shower exclusion had been deliberate. Victoria had made the guest list herself, carefully curating exactly who would witness her celebration. Friends from high school. Colleagues from her part-time job. Members of her book club. My mother, my aunts, my cousins. Not me. When I'd asked my mother about it, casually, not wanting to seem hurt, she'd fumbled through explanations. The venue has capacity limits. Victoria wanted to keep it intimate. You're always so busy with work. She didn't want to impose. 87 people. Intimate. Capacity limits. The lies weren't even creative. The real reason emerged through my cousin Jessica, who'd forwarded the invitation by accident and immediately called to apologize. Victoria said you'd make everything about yourself. That you'd show up in designer clothes and make the other guests feel inadequate. She said you'd judge the venue, the food, the decorations, that you'd ruin the vibe. I would ruin the vibe by attending my sister's baby shower? That's what she told everyone. She said you weren't supportive of the pregnancy anyway. I bought her a $2,000 crib set when she announced. I offered to pay for prenatal appointments when she said money was tight. I know. Jessica sounded uncomfortable. But Victoria tells a different story. And people believe her because? I don't know. Because she's Victoria. Victoria had always been skilled at narrative management. When we were children, she'd break something and somehow convince our parents I was responsible. When we were teenagers, she'd borrow my clothes without asking and claim I'd offered. When we were adults, she'd accept my financial help while telling friends I was controlling and used money as power. The stories she told painted me as a villain, cold, superior, unwilling to participate in family life except through writing checks. The reality was different. I'd tried, repeatedly, to be included. I'd offered to host holidays, plan celebrations, participate in milestones. I'd been told my offers were too much, my presence was stressful, my involvement was unnecessary. Eventually, I'd stopped offering. And my withdrawal was used as evidence that I'd never cared in the first place. The $3,000 request had arrived 3 days before the shower. My mother's call had been frantic, stressed, laden with the guilt induction she'd perfected over decades. The deposit wasn't paid on time. The venue is threatening to cancel. Victoria is devastated, she's 7 months pregnant and doesn't need this stress. Why wasn't the deposit paid? There was a miscommunication. Her husband thought I was handling it, I thought he was. The shower is in 3 days. How did no one notice until now? It doesn't matter how it happened. It matters that we fix it. You're the only one who can transfer that much money quickly. I'm the one who can fix it. But I'm not the one who was invited. Silence on the line. Victoria has her reasons. Victoria excluded me from her baby shower and is now asking me to fund it. Do you understand how that looks? I understand it's complicated. But she's your sister. She's pregnant. Please, Vivian. For the family. For the family. Those 3 words had extracted thousands of dollars from me over the years. Down payments for apartments I'd never visit. Wedding contributions for ceremonies where I was seated in the back. Emergency loans that were never repaid. For the family meant, for everyone except you. I should have said no. Instead, I said, give me the venue's information. I'll handle it. The transfer was processed within hours. But I didn't just pay the deposit. I paid the entire balance, the full $4,700 for the venue rental, catering, decorations, and service staff. Then I made some additional arrangements. The after-party had been Victoria's idea. After the shower, the guests were supposed to move to Luminara, a upscale restaurant in the Arts District, for dinner and drinks. Victoria had reserved their private dining room, though she hadn't paid the deposit yet. I knew the owner. Patricia Okonkwo had been a client of mine for years, and her restaurant was one of my favorite places in the city. I need the private room for Sunday evening, I told her. Whatever Victoria was planning, cancel it. I'll pay double the rate. Is there something I should know about? My sister is hosting a baby shower she didn't invite me to and asking me to pay for. I'd like to redirect the after-party to my own celebration. What are we celebrating? My promotion to CEO. I was planning to announce it quietly, but circumstances have changed. Patricia laughed. Consider the room yours. And congratulations, that's extraordinary news. The day of the shower arrived. I wasn't there, of course. I'd been explicitly excluded, and I had no intention of crashing an event I'd funded but wasn't welcome at. Instead, I went to the spa. I got my nails done, had a massage, sat in the sauna until the tension I'd been carrying for weeks finally released. My phone buzzed occasionally with messages from family members attending the shower. Photos of decorations, food, Victoria opening presents. No one seemed aware yet that I'd funded the entire event. That changed at 3 p.m. The venue manager had been given specific instructions. At 3 p.m. exactly, he was to approach Victoria with an envelope and deliver a message to the assembled guests. The envelope contained the receipt for the full event payment, along with my note, paid in full by your sister, the one you didn't invite. Enjoy. The message to the guests was the announcement about the after-party cancellation. My phone started ringing at 3:02 p.m. My mother. Victoria. 2 aunts. A cousin. More calls than I could count, all arriving within minutes of each other. I answered none of them. The voicemails were illuminating. My mother, what did you do? Victoria is hysterical. The guests are confused. How could you humiliate her at her own baby shower? Victoria, you're insane. You're actually insane. You paid for everything just to make yourself look like a martyr? And you stole my after-party? Aunt Barbara, Vivian, I don't know what's happening, but your sister is 7 months pregnant. This stress isn't good for her or the baby. The messages assumed I was the villain. That I'd engineered humiliation rather than simply illuminating the situation that already existed. My note hadn't accused Victoria of anything. It had merely stated facts. I paid. I wasn't invited. The juxtaposition was damning because the juxtaposition was real. The CEO celebration at Luminara began at 7 p.m. I'd invited 23 people, friends, colleagues, mentors who'd supported my career over the years. People who valued me for who I was, not what I could provide. Patricia had outdone herself with the menu. The wine flowed, the conversation was warm, the celebration felt earned in a way that family events never had. At 8 p.m., my phone showed 17 missed calls from various family members. At 9 p.m., I made my announcement. Thank you all for being here. Some of you know why we're celebrating, some don't. As of Monday, I'll be CEO of Morrison Financial Group. The youngest woman and first person of color to hold the position in the company's history. The applause was genuine, the congratulations heartfelt. I've spent 20 years building a career while being told I was too focused, too ambitious, too unavailable for family. Tonight, I'm choosing to celebrate with the people who've supported me without conditions. Thank you for being that support. The confrontation came 2 days later. Victoria appeared at my apartment unannounced, still visibly pregnant, her face blotchy from crying or rage or both. How could you, she demanded before I'd fully opened the door. How could I what? Pay for your baby shower? Fund an event I wasn't invited to? You made me look like a monster in front of everyone I know. I made you look like exactly what you are, someone who excludes family members while expecting them to fund your celebrations. That's not what happened. Then what did happen, Victoria? Explain to me how 87 people received invitations and I didn't. Explain how I wasn't good enough to attend but my money was good enough to save the venue reservation. She faltered, searching for the narrative that usually protected her. You would have ruined it. You always make everything about yourself. I wasn't there. How could I have made it about myself by not attending? The note. The announcement. Canceling the after party. The note stated facts. The announcement stated facts. The after party was cancelled because I booked the restaurant for my own celebration, a celebration I didn't invite you to, which apparently is acceptable behavior in this family. Victoria sat down heavily on my couch, her pregnancy making standing confrontation difficult. You're so cruel, she said. You've always been cruel. Mom was right about you. What does Mom say about me? That you're cold. That you use money to control people. That you've never really cared about family. Interesting. Because from my perspective, I've spent 20 years being excluded from family events while being expected to fund them. I've been called cold for having boundaries, controlling for having expectations, uncaring for not accepting mistreatment with a smile. That's not how it is. Then how is it? Explain the baby shower. Explain why I wasn't invited. Victoria was quiet for a long moment. I didn't want you there because you make me feel small, she finally said. You show up in your expensive clothes with your important job and everyone talks about how successful Vivian is, how impressive Vivian is. I wanted one day where I was the center of attention without you overshadowing me. So you excluded me. So I excluded you. And then you asked me to pay for it. Mom asked you. I didn't know she was going to call you. But you didn't object when the deposit appeared. You didn't call to thank me, to apologize for the exclusion, to acknowledge what I'd done. I thought it was Mom's money. You thought our mother, who hasn't had that kind of disposable income in years, suddenly produced $3,000 in a day. Victoria didn't answer. We both knew she hadn't questioned the money source because questioning it would have required acknowledging what she'd done. The conversation continued for another hour. Victoria eventually admitted things she'd never said before: resentment about my success, jealousy about my independence, frustration that I'd built a life she couldn't imagine while she struggled with a marriage, a pregnancy, and a sense that her own potential had never been realized. You had everything, she said. Mom and Dad's attention when we were kids. The good grades, the scholarships, the career. I was always just Vivian's sister. You think I had Mom and Dad's attention? They put every resource toward your activities, your social life, your comfort. I was expected to take care of myself because I was capable. Every achievement was met with "that's nice" and a pivot to whatever you needed. That's not how I remember it. No. I don't suppose it is. We didn't resolve anything that night. Decades of resentment couldn't be untangled in a single conversation. But something had shifted. Victoria had been forced to articulate what she'd always felt, and I'd been forced to hear how my success had registered to someone who experienced childhood from a completely different perspective. Neither of us was entirely right. Neither of us was entirely wrong. But I wasn't going to apologize for the baby shower response. That had been a consequence of her choices, not an act of cruelty on my part. The family fallout continued for weeks. My mother called repeatedly, trying to mediate, to smooth over, to restore the equilibrium that had always worked in her favor. Victoria feels terrible. The whole situation has been blown out of proportion. Victoria excluded me from a major life event and expected me to fund it. The situation is exactly as proportioned as it should be. But family shouldn't keep score. I'm not keeping score. I'm declining to continue a pattern where I provide resources while being treated as disposable. That's not scorekeeping. That's self-respect. You've always been so hard, Vivian. Can't you just what? Accept exclusion with a smile? Pay for celebrations I'm not welcome at? Be the ATM without expecting acknowledgement? I didn't raise you to be this resentful. You raised me to be useful. I'm deciding now that usefulness isn't the same as value. The CEO role began as scheduled. The announcement had been made, the transition completed, the company's board had welcomed me with a celebration that stood in stark contrast to my family's response. At work, I was respected. At work, my contributions were recognized. At work, my success was celebrated rather than resented. It took the family situation to fully illuminate what I'd built outside of them, a community that valued me for who I was, not what I could provide. Victoria's baby was born 2 months after the shower. I sent a gift, a generous contribution to the baby's college fund, because whatever issues existed between Victoria and me, the child was innocent. I didn't visit the hospital. I wasn't sure I'd be welcome, and I wasn't willing to create a scene during what should have been a peaceful moment. Victoria sent a text 3 days after the birth: she's healthy. 7 pounds, 4 ounces. Her name is Eleanor. I responded, congratulations. I hope she has every happiness. It wasn't the warm sibling exchange that some families have. But it was honest. It was what we could manage. The reconciliation, if it could be called that, happened over months rather than moments. Victoria and I began texting occasionally, photos of Eleanor, updates about major events, cautious communications that didn't require the emotional weight of phone calls or visits. "I'm sorry about the shower," she wrote one day, 5 months after Eleanor's birth. "I was wrong to exclude you and wrong to let Mom ask you for money. Thank you for saying that. I've been thinking about what you said, about being the ATM. About being expected to provide without being included. I didn't see it that way before, but I understand it now." What changed? Motherhood. "I think about how I'd feel if Eleanor was treated the way you've been treated. Used but not valued. Expected to give but not welcome to receive. That's a significant realization. I don't want to be that kind of family. I want Eleanor to grow up knowing her aunt, really knowing you, not just knowing you're the person who sends money." The relationship that slowly rebuilt wasn't what we'd had before. It couldn't be. Too much damage had accumulated, too many patterns had been established. But we built something new, more honest, more boundaried, more respectful of each other's separateness. Victoria stopped expecting me to fund things. I stopped expecting her to understand my career. We found a middle ground where we could appreciate each other without the old dynamics poisoning every interaction. My mother adapted more slowly. She still occasionally tried the for the family approach, still sometimes forgot that I was a person rather than a resource. But Victoria began pushing back alongside me, and the unified front made a difference. Eleanor's first birthday party was the first family event I attended in over a year. Victoria had sent a real invitation this time, my name on the envelope, my attendance specifically requested. "I want you there," she'd said. "Not your money. Not your presents. You." I went. The party was modest, nothing like the elaborate shower that had caused so much turmoil. 20 people in Victoria's backyard, homemade cake, children running through sprinklers. "Thank you for coming," Victoria said as I arrived. "Thank you for inviting me. That should have never needed to be said. Sisters should be automatic invitations. We're working on it." Eleanor grabbed my finger during the cake cutting, her small hand surprisingly strong. "That's your Aunt Vivian," Victoria told her. "She's very important. And very loved." The words were simple, but they carried weight. An acknowledgement of what I'd never heard from my sister before. I wasn't just useful. I was loved. The baby shower had been a breaking point that became a turning point. My note, "Paid in full by your sister, the one you didn't invite," had been deliberately provocative. The after-party cancellation had been unquestionably petty. The CEO celebration had been a pointed contrast to my family's treatment. But sometimes breaking points are necessary. Sometimes the polite accommodation of mistreatment has to end dramatically before it can end at all. I'd spent 40 years being the reliable one, the capable one, the one who could handle anything without requiring support. The baby shower had been my declaration that capability didn't mean I was available for exploitation. That being able to afford things didn't mean I was obligated to fund them. That having resources didn't make me less deserving of respect. Victoria had learned. My mother had learned. The family had adjusted. And I'd learned something too, that protecting myself wasn't cruelty, even when it was uncomfortable for others to witness. My sister's baby shower had 87 guests. I wasn't one of them. But when the venue needed $3,000 3 days before the event, I was the first call. I paid, not the deposit, but the entire event. Then I canceled the afterparty and booked the restaurant for my own celebration, my promotion to CEO. The note I sent was simple: "Paid in full by your sister, the one you didn't invite." My family called me cruel, cold, vindictive. Maybe I was. But I was also finished being the ATM that funded celebrations I wasn't welcome at. The shower became a breaking point that forced conversations we should have had years earlier. Victoria apologized. Our relationship rebuilt on honesty instead of obligation. And Eleanor, my niece, will grow up knowing her aunt as family, not just as the person who sends money. Some breaking points become turning points. This one became both.